There we are. All right. So our objectives for today, quite simple. First, we're going to rank and provide feedback on the initial array of alternatives that our team has put together. Lots more information on that coming in a bit. We will also generate additional community-preferred alternatives. So that's basically, those are going to be two breakout work groups that we're going to have today. One is for objective number 1, the second is for objective number 2. Also today in our presentation, we're going to explain the plan formulation process. We will provide an up-to-minute update on our technical analysis progress, and we'll also preview some future opportunities for additional community input. So here's our agenda for today. We're in our introduction now. We will have some opening remarks from Colonel Peavy and Mayor Blanchard. Then we will go to our presentation, and then we will have 2 breakout work groups. And today we're going to do report outs from those work groups to the large group, which sometimes before we haven't had time to do that, but I think it'll be valuable today. And then we'll finally wrap up. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to read through the slide, but I just wanted to, call attention to the fact that community input has really been an important part of this study. It has had a big influence, on the things that we've considered. We're trying to, listen to the community as much as possible, be as transparent as possible. So the management measure tracker, for example, is an example of that, and we will certainly continue in this vein, and there will be more opportunities to come for you to provide input as we continue to progress through the study. So today, our presenters, we have Cindy Akpal, the project manager, Eric Merriam is our study lead, Kelly Philbin, our technical lead. They will present. There's myself, Tyson Vaughn, the MC, and then we have some additional facilitators, Zach and Vera from the core. And then on the right, is, not even a comprehensive list, I think, of all the folks from the city and county of Honolulu. They really have full court press on. A lot of folks from there will be on today's call as discussants, which means they will be listening. They want to hear what the community has to say. They will also be available to answer questions if there are any particular questions specific to their departments that arise. And there may even be a few others that are not listed here that will be on today's call. So I think that shows the strength of the partnership that we have between the Corps of Engineers and the City and County of Honolulu. And with that, I want to hand things over to Mr. Rick Blanchard, the Mayor of Honolulu, for our opening remarks. But I think at this point, the Mayor needs a little introduction. But I'll just say that he has been a strong supporter of this study from day one. His staff have been integrated into our planning team, and his administration has emphasized the critical importance of community participation and input throughout the study process. So, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Tyson. And I want to welcome everybody who's participating on this call tonight. And I'm going to keep my remarks very brief, but do not confuse that with any lack of interest in this project. First of all, I'm very anxious to hear what Colonel Peavy has to say. This is our first time doing a call like this, and as you've indicated, many of my colleagues are also on this call tonight. And you just said it all, Tyson. We're very interested in this project and very committed to this project and anxious to do it not only the right way, but to actually bring it to fruition. So with that said, City and County recognizes the importance of this project. We are very grateful to have the Army Corps of Engineers back at the table with us working on this, and I'm anxious to hear what gets said tonight. So thank you all. It's a privilege and an exciting opportunity to be here tonight. So let's just get on with it, Tyson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. I'll turn now to the commander, who holds a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Georgia and a master's of science in public administration from Central Michigan. He recently took over command of the Honolulu District after having served as the 25th Infantry Division Engineer at Schofield Barracks. Colonel Peavy, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Tyson. I'm going to do an audio check just because I'm doing this from Quadrant.
You got it.
Great. So I want to keep my video on the whole time for everyone, but I may cut it off just to save bandwidth because the internet isn't as fast at Quadrant. Hey, I'm going to take the Mayor's League Search. Great to see you again. Thanks for being a part of this. It's a real honor to be here. I took command on the 24th of June, and I would say the first thing on my mind is this project. So I'm honored not only to be a partner here, but this hits home for me because this is my second time in Hawaii, and I actually have Ohana really good friends that live in the area too. So I mean, it's an emotional thing for me as well. And I know it's an emotional thing for everyone. I just wanted to say thanks for all the partnership, not only with the city, county, Honolulu, but also the other partners that are on the line today. Thursday I won't be able to make it. I apologize, but I'm in quarantine or forced quarantine. I don't have COVID, but forced quarantine. Just look at some of the projects here. But yeah, this is such a benefit to the community. And again, we want to kind of build on the strong relationships we have so far, and just look forward to what we can do here in the future. And like you said, sir, look forward to the brief, just like you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it. Hold on a sec. I think we had an accidental.
Sort of, if I get a picture like yours, I would have my picture, but I'm not allowed to, so I have to wear that suit thing. I wear aloha shirts every day.
I would like to wear that too. Okay, I have changed the presentator. Yes, the presenter back to me. Okay, yes, I have actually set this meeting so that anybody can present. So that happens from time to time. But I wanted to do that just in case someone from the community had something that they wanted to share at some point. So I want to get into our ground rules for our presentation. Same as always, very simple. Please post your comments and questions in the chat or hold them until the breakout groups. Keep your audio on mute during the presentation. And try not to share your screen during the presentation. If you are having technical difficulties, I just put my email into the chat actually, so you can send an email directly to me, or you can just put it in the chat, and I or one of my colleagues will answer you if you do that. And so with that, let's get to the presentation. I think that this slide is Cindy, is that right?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'll be covering the management measures as well as the study process and timeline. You may have seen this slide several times, but it's really a good screen capture of it all in one page of where we are in the study process and what the study entails, as well as the public engagement opportunities which are at the line bar at the bottom. And so the study really began in the study scoping phase, where we began with phase 1 meetings, where we introduced the general reevaluation study and also received our initial input from the community. And based off of that meeting, we received a lot of great feedback, and we went ahead and revised our engagement strategy. A lot of what we had heard at those November meetings was that the community wanted a lot more touch points, a lot more opportunities to provide input early in the study process. And so we revealed that updated engagement strategy at a meeting back in January of this year. And then following that, we held a series of sub-basin workshops where we worked with the community in developing a series of management measures. And so we posted that up to the website, the project website, and we'll be going over that in the next slide. But where we are right now is we've been going through those management measures, and starting to screen them and arrange them into arrays of alternatives. And so we had such great community input, a great number of measures that were proposed. But part of that process also involves the technical team taking a good hard look at each and every one of those measures. And so screening measures really has taken the team a little bit more time than we really anticipated. So as of current right now, our study schedule is delayed at least 2 months. We're still trying to get a good handle on how far behind we are. But rather than delaying this particular meeting, because we have this on our calendar, this July 22 public phase 2 public meetings, we had contemplated pushing it back until we're ready to go over the final array of alternatives, which is initially what this meeting's intent was for. But we decided, you know what, we'll just hold another meeting. I mean, I hope you don't mind, but a lot of the feedback we heard is that you would prefer to have more opportunities for input, more meetings. And so for that, we decided that, we're going to hold to this July 2022 date and hold an additional public meeting after we come up with that final array. And so it really provides an opportunity for all of you to provide input to our study process, like early on in the process, where it's easier to update and make changes to that. So next slide, please. All right, so this slide here is about the management measures and the screening criteria that we had used. Out of those 223 measures, we went through them and we used this initial list of screening criteria. So, for example, study authority. Is it within the study authority? Does it address flood risk management, riverine flood risk? Technical feasibility. Is the measure even possible from a preliminary technical aspect? Effectiveness, what extent would it reduce life risk as well as economic damages? And then efficiency, which is our expected cost effectiveness. And then finally, our environmental effects. So we evaluate the preliminary benefits and impacts of each of these measures. And so using these screening criteria, we're able to narrow down the 223 management measures that we had in our tracker. Other things that we used to help in this management or measure screening was utilizing the existing models and data that we had from the previous iterations of the study. And to do that, we were able to use their water volumes as well as expected damages and high-level costs. And then what we did is we tiered the management measures. And so once again, this little snippet at the bottom, the tiering really was not intended to be a hierarchy of importance or preference, or it's not intended to state that any one management measure is more likely to make it to the final array than any other management measure. It really was just a way for our technical team to kind of put into order what it makes sense to model first versus second, because there's some functions, because we're looking at a system here, right? Some features affect other features. If you do something upstream, it's going to have an effect downstream. So, what we decided to do is start at the upper watershed portion and start modeling that, seeing what effect it might have on the lower watershed, and then model that second. That has nothing to do really with the level of importance or likelihood that we think that it might make it to the final array. Right, next slide, please. Okay, so this is our wonderful management measure tracking spreadsheet. This is just a snapshot of the first page of it. There's a total of 223 measures. Out of those, 172 have been screened, and 51 are still under consideration. This management measure tracking spreadsheet can be found on the project website at www.honolulu.gov/all. And then it's going to be under that resources tab, and that's to see the full spreadsheet. Now, for our upcoming breakout sessions, what we'll be doing is we will be looking at the management measures that haven't been screened out yet. And so for that, we also uploaded to the project website on the homepage a version of this that takes out everything that was screened out and looks at everything that is still under consideration. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eric.
Okay, great. So, we'll be talking a lot more about these individual measures as we move forward through today, but we just kind of wanted to give everybody a sense of the types and the number of measures that are still on the table. So, as Cindy just mentioned, we have 51 measures that have yet to be screened out. So this is just a rundown. So you can see that these include bridge modifications, bypasses. We'll talk a lot more about bypasses today. Channel modifications of various types, channel naturalization, detention and dams, flood walls and berms, gates, which I did see a few messages in the chat about gates on the Olive Canal. Impervious surface reduction, non-structural measures. And so when we talk about non-structural measures today, we're talking about things like elevating homes and flood-proofing homes, acquiring or relocating homes, and then that can also incorporate things like flood warning and flood planning. Pumps, reforestation, tunnels, and then always we have the no action, which is something that we are required to look at for policy and guidance. It's kind of what we compare everything else to as we move forward through the study process. So again, we'll talk more about these, and when we get kind of it further into the workshops, we do have kind of a more detailed list, and we actually also posted an updated management measure tracker. I don't want to say updated, but a management measure tracker on the website that lists only those 51 measures to help us with the workshops later in today's meeting. So go on, Tyson. So really the last workshops, as Cindy mentioned, focused on kind of developing and screening management measures, and now we're tasked with taking those management measures and combining them into an array of what we call alternatives that address and achieve our study objectives. And if you recall, our study objectives really are to: 1, reduce life safety risk throughout the watershed; 2, reduce flood damages to homes and properties; and 3 is to reduce economic impacts to commerce and tourism. And so really, we're taking each of those measures, and some of those measures will, meet one objective or another. Some might meet all 3, right? So we combine those into an array of plans that are, at the scale of the entire watershed. So you can imagine we have 51 measures, right? So if you think about it, right, if you combine all 51 of those into, every single possible measure or alternative, I'm not great at mental math. I think it's like 51 factorial. It's a lot of potential alternatives. And so what we're tasked with is finding an objective way to put these alternatives together, and then start comparing them to one another. One thing to really note here is that the formulation process is iterative, right? So we are presenting today the results of the first iteration of that plan formulation process. And so we very much are presenting that that first iteration, the initial array of alternatives. It's really important to note that as we continue on, the alternatives that are shown today will change, right? The alternatives that move forward throughout the study process will change. They'll change based on the feedback that you give us today. They'll change based off continued analyses as we continue to refine our analyses. And so I just really want to kind of drive that point home. We're seeking your input early in the initial formulation process, earlier than we had anticipated. And so again, this is an opportunity for you to engage in this process a little bit earlier on. And so again, just highlight that today is the initial array. And so Tyson, go ahead and move forward. We wanted to talk about, so I mentioned that we have a lot of alternatives. So we have to have an objective way to combine these things into a series of alternatives. And so because we have such a large number of measures and we have such a wide variety of types of measures, the team came up with this, what we're calling cornerstone strategy. And we didn't invent this strategy. It's a well-known plan formulation strategy. It's used all across the Army Corps. But basically what you do is you identify what they call the cornerstone of each plan. And so for our cornerstones, we picked various types of measures. So for example, we'll kind of go through them, but storage is a type of measure. And so we have a cornerstone. you identify those storage areas first, and then you add on additional measures later that help you meet your objectives in ways that cornerstone could not meet on their own. And so really what this allows us to do is to have each type of measure be the focus of the plan. And so if you have a bypass focus measure, right, the bypasses become the focus of the plan. And you can see how they work when they're meant to shine in that alternative. The same with storage and so forth. So as we talk about our initial array today, we do have a number of we have about 7 plans we're going to talk about today. So the first is the storage cornerstone. Again, we identified critical storage areas throughout the watershed that became our cornerstone, and then we added on additional types of measures throughout the watershed that help us meet our objectives better. We also have a series of measures where we try to modify the conveyance. And so we utilize existing infrastructure and bypasses in one cornerstone, flood walls in another cornerstone, and then a second outlet and daylighting in a third cornerstone in terms of modifying conveyance. We also have a tunnel cornerstone. Again, I saw some comments in the chat about the relevance of tunnels to this system and the work that's been done in the past. And so that is one of our cornerstones. We have a natural and nature-based cornerstone, and then we're calling a hybrid or combined cornerstone, where instead of picking just one type of measure, we said, okay, well, we could pick a number of the most important of various types of measures to be a cornerstone. What would that look like? And then finally, we always have our no action plan, which means we wouldn't do anything. Again, which is something that we look at based off policy. It's what we compare all of the other alternatives to. So next, we're going to kind of step through each of these alternatives. But before I do, there was a great comment in the chat, and I know Kelly and others have been kind of responding to it. But one of the questions is, what event are we kind of designing these alternatives to, right? And in reality, we're still trying to nail that down. So one of the tasks that we have as a study team is, we kind of had the constraints of, so the last iteration of this study were constrained to looking at the 100-year flood, because that's what they were authorized to look at. Again, because this is a general reevaluation, those constraints were taken off of us. So we are considering the full range of events, from the 2-year all the way up to the 500-year. And so as we go through the formulation process, again, we have previously looked at the 100 years, so we have some data on there. We can look at all these other events, but really we haven't nailed that down yet, right? So that will come and continue to be refined as we step through the process. And so for today's discussion, we're not necessarily saying this plan will work under the 100-year, this plan will work under the 50-year, right? In reality, at the end of the day, after we go through various iterations of the planning process, again, this is just step one of kind of an unknown. We don't know how many steps are going to be yet, right? It just depends on how the analyses go. As we get through those next steps, we'll refine. And so somebody made a comment that some measures work better for a 5-year event or a 10-year event, whereas some work better for a 100-year event. That's absolutely true. And the same goes for different areas in the watershed. What we may be able to justify in one portion of the watershed, it might be a 20-year event, and where it might be a 100-year event in other portions of the watershed. So, we're not even necessarily looking at a 100-year event for everywhere, or a 20-year event for everywhere. It could differ based off of what is justifiable in different areas of the watershed. So again, this is just step one. And as we move through and you're providing your feedback today, let us know what you think, right? We think we can justify a 100-year event here. We think this measure would work the best for that purpose, right? So give us that feedback. But just kind of wanted to talk about that so that everybody can kind of hear the discussions going on in the chat. Okay, so next slide, please. Next. So again, just wanted to reiterate a few things, right? So these plans, again, are the first of several iterations of the plan formulation process. So really, they will be refined, and we expect them to be refined. And they will be refined based off of the feedback that you provide us today, as well as additional technical analysis moving forward. It is very possible, and it's likely that the final recommendation is not included in this initial array that we're showing you today. Again, because we've developed these alternatives based off our initial modeling and initial analyses. When we go back through and we start modeling these, we get better, or not better, but we refine the data and the analyses, they will change, right? So we expect them to change. And so because of that, it's very likely that none of these alternatives that we present today will be the final array. This is just the next step in getting there, or the final recommendation. This is just the next step in getting there. It's also important to remember that, again, we're still early in the process, right? So the measures and plans that we're presenting today are still we're still conceptual, right? We haven't nailed down specifics in terms of specific designs for measures. What we have done is gone in and done enough design to know that they, it looks like they can reduce risk, and so they've been incorporated in these initial array, right? So, but they're still very conceptual. And finally, we will be looking at non-structural plans a little bit more detail. We do not have a cornerstone that's focused on non-structural, although we will likely have one later. And so again, as we continue on, I think Cindy mentioned we're going to try to have another series of meetings to talk about that final array. And so we'll kind of further develop that later. But non-structural will be included, as you'll see, in these existing plans, at least to reduce remaining risk or residual risk throughout the watershed. So just some things I want to highlight before we go through. The next slide, Tyson. Okay, so quickly, we're going to walk through these alternatives. And again, after we walk through these alternatives, we're going to be asking for your feedback on them. Tyson's going to go through a series of polls, and then we're going to have our workshops. But I'm going to walk through them with you here so that you kind of get the understanding of how they were developed. So again, the first alternative is what we're calling our storage cornerstone. So the three pieces of that cornerstone included the Makiki District Park Detention, the Manoa Valley District Park Detention, and the Alawai Golf Course Detention. So kind of those larger blue shaded areas. Those represent some of the largest existing spaces that we can actually capture and detain water throughout the watershed. We know that those detention areas aren't going to be able to do it all alone, though. And so we are going to have other measures throughout the watershed. So, for example, if we start with Manoa, right? So we will be able to hold some water back with the Manoa Valley District Park, but we're likely still going to need some measures at Woodlawn, right? So again, we don't let the water jump banks at the Woodlawn Bridge. So we'll have some combination of a flood wall and channel modification or a flood wall and bypass as part of this alternative. Again, this is just the initial array, but so we're still going to need to do something there to prevent water from jumping bank and going down through kind of the university area. As you move further downstream, we're also looking at it. I have a kind of key high school storage area here. In reality, it's not necessarily storage, but what we do is kind of wrap the flood wall around that area to prevent water from moving east into the neighboring adjacent areas just north of the Alawai golf course. In addition, Koali Road flood wall. So because, again, we still have water flowing, we'll be able to hold some back in the Manoa Valley District Park. It's likely that there's still going to be some flood risk for the community right there by the Koali Road. And so we're still likely, we're also showing that we're going to need something there, right? A flood wall, some pipe perhaps is one way to address that. So if you move over to Makiki, we know that the river jumps banks along the Kanaha Stream there, and so we have a flood wall there to prevent water from jumping bank. And also that flood wall would help us kind of route water into the Makiki District Park Detention Basin, so we kind of make that measure more effective. And then if you move over to Palolo, we also have a channel modification of Palolo that our initial results are showing can store some water, reduce some flood risk for the communities in the Palolo Stream. And then finally, we do, even though we can store water, it's likely that under certain events we would still have water coming out of the canal, so we would need some type of flood wall along the Alawai Canal. Again, if we can store water or do things further up in the watershed, the flood walls may need to be a little bit lower, and we'll see that in other areas where we're trying to maximize, we're trying to, kind of minimize the impact of that flood wall from a community perspective by adding on additional measures where we can. And all of these, as we move forward, I have number 11 and 12 there. We have pumps and other structures, so the pumps along the canal as needed to reduce residual risk if the flood walls kind of cause water back up in the adjacent drainage systems. And then also non-structural measures to reduce residual risk. So what we're not showing here is, where flooding would still, we haven't necessarily modeled this 100% yet, so we don't know where flooding would still kind of come out of the banks and impact structures. So we could do non-structural measures, things like elevating structures, flood-proofing structures to reduce residual risk. So you'll see those two, pumps and other structures and non-structural, kind of throughout these alternatives. And that will be refined as we move forward. So that's the first alternative. So Tyson, next, please. I realize I'm talking long. I always do that. So I want to speed through these, but I'll try to get through them, make sure we have time. So alternative 2A is our first of the conveyance cornerstones, and it's bypasses of existing infrastructure. So with respect to the bypasses of existing infrastructure, we have 6 cornerstones here. The P. Equay Street bypass to the left there along the Kiki stream would take water through existing infrastructure, existing stormwater systems, which would be upgraded down to the Alamoana Park, and that's the kind of drainage system there. But again, it would take out the Kiki stream, hopefully reduce risk further downstream. The Woodlawn bypass, which was looked at in other iterations of this study, would seek to kind of bypass water around the bridge to prevent water from jumping back there and going down through the university. The Kapahulu bypass could start up at the Palolo stream and route water from the Palolo stream all the way out to the sea, and then also so it could route from Palolo, but it could also tie into a bypass that could kind of work as a secondary outlet for the Alawai Canal as well. So it wouldn't necessarily be an open outlet as we might see in another alternative, but it would be an underground secondary outlet that would use existing infrastructure that would serve that purpose as well. So we get water from the Palolo as well as from the canal through that Kapahulu bypass. The Fort Jerusi bypass and the Saratoga bypass would kind of serve as similar to the microtunnels that we've talked about before, where again there's existing infrastructure that we could tie into, and they could pull water out of the canal and help lower water elevations in the canal during these events. And then finally, the Poppy Avenue bypass again can kind of similar to the portions of the Kapahulu bypass serve as like a secondary outlet for the canal, again during these higher flow events. So again, that's trying to manage water and route water out of these damaged areas, out to the coast, to reduce the impacts kind of internally into the watershed. But again, analysis indicated we're still likely going to need other measures. So if you start up in the Kiki, we're still looking at the Kanaha flood wall there. So although we can pull water out, we still expect water to jump back there. And so you might need an additional flood. You still might need a flood wall to prevent water from doing that. If we can't pull water out, then we can look at daylighting the stream to open that stream up and allow additional capacity in the stream to allow additional conveyance. So if we go over to Manoa, we're still looking at the Manoa Valley District Park because we could again store water there, and if we can store water, that would reduce the amount of water that we would have to be pushing through that bypass and ultimately pushing downstream. Still likely going to need a flood wall to prevent water from jumping back upstream of the bypass itself. Likely the flood wall might need to be a little bit lower. The Kawali Road flood wall still, we're just to make sure that we're reducing risk for those communities down there, we still have that one included, as well as the Alawai Canal flood walls. And so again, although we're trying in this measure, we're trying to route water from each of these streams out to the coast. And so the intent would be to have hopefully the flood walls along the canal would need to be lower, but they would still be there to reduce residual risk to the Waikiki and Ili communities. And then finally, we are including canal dredging here as well. So again, we can dredge the canal to increase the storage of the canal as well as kind of those bypasses and microtunnels to reduce the water, or to also expedite water leaving the canal in other areas to again reduce the height of those flood walls. And finally, pumps and non-structural, similar to the last alternative. Okay, so Tyson, next. So for the flood wall alternative, again, flood walls were the cornerstone. And understanding that flood walls may or may not be preferred, right? But again, just to see how they work, kind of when they can give them their time to shine, right? So we have the Kanaha flood wall, again, upstream in the Kiki watershed to prevent water from jumping back there and going down through the Alamoana neighborhoods. The Woodlawn flood wall up in Manoa, again, to prevent water from jumping back right at the Woodlawn Bridge. Again, the Kawali flood wall, because again, this we would be keeping water in the channel here, so the flood wall of the Kawali Road would likely need to be a little bit higher again because we're not storing water, we're not routing water, we're keeping it all on the channel. And so the Kawali flood wall would be important. And then again, the Alawai Canal flood walls. The team also added on some of those microtunnels. So the Fort Jerusi bypass and Saratoga bypass, as well as the Kapahulu. Again, in doing so, we can reduce kind of water surface elevations in the canal, as well as canal dredging, again, to create more storage. So even though the flood walls would be kind of the cornerstone here, including those could reduce kind of the need, the height of that flood wall, I'll say. And again, finally, pumps and non-structural, similarly as the other measures. So for 2C, which is the secondary outlet, so although we talked about a secondary outlet utilizing existing underground infrastructure, this would be kind of the open second outlet of the canal that has been looked at in the past, right? We didn't obviously come up with this one on our own, but our results are showing that it could provide some benefit. So that is the cornerstone for this alternative. But again, that in and of itself is going to reduce risk throughout the entire watershed. So again, in Makiki, you would at least need a canal flood wall, additional measures there as needed and additional iterations, but at least a flood wall there. Similarly, the woodlawn flood wall and channel modification, so you keep water in the banks at the bridge itself so that it doesn't go down through the university area. Similar to the last alternative, we still would need a quality road flood wall to reduce risks for those communities down further in the watershed. And then finally, the hollow canal flood walls. Again, we would hope that the secondary outlet would be, expedite water movement out of the canal itself. And so again, the flood walls might not need to be as high, but likely still going to need some other type of measure to reduce residual risk along the canal. And then again, pumps and non-structural as needed to reduce residual risk. So the alternative 3 is the tunnel alternative. And so obviously the cornerstone for this, similar to the ocean proposal, right, would be tunnels in the Makiki, the Manoa, and the Pololo channels. And so we're just drawing representatives here of what an alignment might look like. But even then, right, the tunnels, we would still expect there to be some flood risk that remained in lower portions of the watershed. And so even with the tunnels, we would expect to need something at Woodlawn Bridge, right? Because there's so much water coming down. We want to make sure that we protect kind of the university areas and we don't have the water jumping in the bank there. And again, likely would need flood walls down along the Alawai Canal. Again, it would likely need to be a lot lower, right? Because we're hoping to kind of take a lot of that water that would be up in those watersheds coming down to the canal and routing it through the tunnels. But again, depending on the size of those tunnels and the effectiveness of them, we may still need something around the canal itself to reduce risk. And then finally, again, pumps and non-structural to reduce residual risk. So alternative 4 is natural nature-based. And so what we started with this one is we looked at what we had for natural nature-based measures, and we try to add on to that with measures that would have minimal impacts or the least impact to the environment. So again, start with the natural nature-based measures and then try to add on things that would have minimal impact to the environment. And so for the cornerstone, we have forest management and reduced impervious surface. And so because of those there's a very broad kind of watershed scale. They're just represented on this map as kind of dots further up in the watershed as 1 and 2. Our analysis are showing that even with those measures, right, still not going to be able to reduce downstream flows and nothing to not require additional measures. So we're still going to need kind of the full suite of measures throughout the watershed, although they may not need to be as large or container or bypass as much water, for example. And so in addition to forest management and reduced impervious surface areas, if we start over in Makiki, we're still likely going to need the canal flood wall, right? So water's still going to jump the bank there, and so still going to need that flood wall. That's number 3. And then 13 there, I kind of jumped around there, but in addition to that, we're likely going to look at either the bypass along Pikoi Street or the Makiki Valley District Park, in addition to the canal flood wall, one of those two. And if you move over to Manoa, again, so even with forest management and reduced impervious surface, we're still going to have large amount of water coming down. So we're likely still going to need Manoa Valley District Park and some combination of measures at the bridge. So maybe modifications to the bridge itself, the flood wall, and or channel modification and the bypass. Sorry, I lost my words there. So again, the point being that even if we do the forest management and reduce impervious surface, we're still going to need those measures to reduce risk to those areas. Similarly, the quality flood wall would likely still be needed, and then also below low, either the below Valley District Park and or the channel modification right there next to the below Valley District Park would be needed as well. As you move down further into the watershed, we'd still be looking to store water in the golf course. Again, if we can store water, if we can maximize storage, you can maximize infiltration, you can maximize kind of uptake of pollutants that way, as well as kind of reduce that pulse of those contaminants going out to the ocean. So storage is always good. We've also talked about incorporating dredging of the Manila Canal. Not necessarily the Alawai Canal because of potential contaminants there, but the Manila Canal we have incorporated, as well as the Kaimuki High School kind of storage area, or at least preventing water from moving eastward as it kind of continues to spill bank along the Manila Canal. And then finally, again, pumps and non-structural to reduce residual risk. And so again, this one, I know there's a lot of measures remaining, but I think the point is that even with those forest management reduced impervious surface, measures going to be needed kind of at various points throughout the watershed to reduce residual risk.
What's next door?
Going along here. And then finally, the last alternative is what we're calling kind of the combined or hybrid plan, again, where it's not one specific type of measure that becomes a cornerstone. But we said, okay, you kind of pick 3 of various types. What would they be? And so the team picked the Manila District Park Detention Basin, the Woodlawn Bypass, and then the Alawai Canal flood walls. And then again, even on top of those, we would continue to need additional measures. So even if we included Manila District Park, we still need something at Woodlawn Bridge, so the flood wall with the bypass. Again, the Kawali Road flood wall. Moving over to Makiki, we're looking at the Kanaha flood wall in combination with the Makiki District Park Detention Basin. And then again, the below District Park channel modification to reduce risk in below as best as we can. And then finally, pumps and other structures and non-structural as needed, as all of the other measures. And so I think that's it for me in terms of the array of alternatives. And so next, I don't want to steal Tyson's thunder, but we're going to be asking for specific input on these, right? We'll have these ready to show in the workshops as we move forward. But what I do want to reiterate is that this is the initial array, right? And so things may have been left out, things maybe could have been included, maybe something that's still on that list of 51 is in there. So we'll be asking for you to provide that input as well. But the most important thing to remember is that this is the initial kind of iteration of this planning process. And so, I do not want anybody to leave this meeting thinking these are the plans that we're going to be comparing among and selecting among. In reality, there's going to be more iterations of this. These will be refined as we move forward. We're just bringing you into this process a little bit earlier than expected, but it's a great opportunity for you to provide input into this process earlier. So with that, Tyson, I think I pass the ball back to you at this point. Oh, no, I lied. Okay, and so as we move forward into this series, right? So as we move forward in the plan formulation process, ultimately we evaluate all these alternatives, right? So we have a series of what we're calling evaluation criteria here, and you can read these. And so, for example, are these alternatives complete? Do they include all the actions that we need to realize the objectives and achieve the effects, right? So is there something we're missing? Are they not complete? Are they acceptable? And when we talk about acceptability, we're really talking about acceptability with respect to laws, policy, and regulations. We are getting your input on acceptability to you as a public, right? But also, in addition to that, right, is there something with respect to laws and policies that we may be missing? How efficient are they? And so, just with what we know now, cost benefits, right? Effectiveness, to reducing life safety. So we can think about reducing water inundation depths, water velocities, how they might impact critical infrastructure, transportation routes, effectiveness from the economic perspective, reducing damages, and then finally, environmental effects, right? Tonight, we talk about qualitatively what will they do to in-stream habitats, marine habitats, how might they benefit or impact water quality, terrestrial habitats, threatened or endangered species, right? So again, as we move forward through this tonight, think about all of these things. And finally, social considerations. again, qualitative assessment, things like social equity. Are we, considering flood risk equally among the communities? Are we or are we not considering appropriately vulnerable populations in certain communities? What about social identity? Are these plans impacting social identity? User groups, community cohesion, quality of life, all of those things, right? So as you continue to think about these and provide feedback on them, these are the criteria that at least initially we're considering as we evaluate these. And as we move forward, right, kind of how we quantify these criteria will change as we get more data. But right now, even having qualitative discussions about these is really valuable for us. And just to know that they will be kind of refined as we move forward. And so with that, I think
all right, Eric, appreciate it. I'm going to run a poll here in a second where you'll be able to give sort of your initial reaction to this. After I do the poll, then we'll have the breakout work groups so we can discuss it in more detail, how you feel about these initial alternatives. So first, let me load this poll. Just give me a second here. I've got to pull this up. Okay. All right. I'm going to open the poll. We'll give you 2 minutes. And I ask 2 questions. Which ones do you prefer? You can select as many as you wish. And the second question is, which alternatives are you not that fond of? Select as many as you wish. And as you're doing that poll, again, great questions in the chat. We always have a very active chat. That is fantastic. Really appreciate your input, your concerns, your questions. I think this group always asks really good questions. Sometimes we don't have the precise answers yet because we're not quite there yet in terms of the analysis. But you guys are always on the right track. I also want to mention before we go into the breakouts that, as a reminder of things that we have heard throughout this study and these engagements, some of the comments, for example, in today's chat were about an integrated plan. We need to make sure that this is the plan is it's not too focused on one purpose and ignoring everything else in the watershed. So we're very aware of that. Something we've discussed before. This is a flood risk management project, so we have certain authorities that we have to pay attention to, but that doesn't mean that we just ignore environmental considerations or other considerations either. So we're very aware of that. And then, of course, another thing is a general preference for natural and nature-based features. And so that's also something we're quite aware of. And we can discuss more in the breakouts. So we just have a few more seconds here. And let's share. Okay. Okay, so you can see, let's see, on preference, I see, natural and nature-based features is number 1 there. There's a bit on storage as well, and even Alt 2A get some votes. Quite a few folks were not able to answer or chose not to answer for whatever reason. Of course, we do have some quite a few people from the Corps and the city and county on, so they may not have answered. Which alternatives give you pause? flood walls and tunnels got the most votes on that question. So that's great. This is good to know. All right, so I'm going to get us ready now for our breakouts. Let's see. You can close that polling panel if you like. Just click the X there. And you know, actually, because we have 63 participants, and quite a few of them are from the core or the city, I think I'm just going to do 2 discussion groups because I want to make sure that there's sort of a, you know, enough folks from the community in each group to have a discussion together. Vera will, pardon me, Vera will be our facilitator in the main room. I don't know, actually, do we have anyone who's only on phone? It looks like perhaps we may have one person who's only on phone. If you're just on the phone, you'll stay in the main room here with Vera. Everyone else will get assigned to a breakout session, and I'm going to do that in a second here. Let's see, I will assign you randomly. And we will have 45 minutes. I think we're pretty much on time. Okay. Go. It'll take a few minutes, seconds for people to get assigned. Those of you who are from the city and are co-hosts, or from the core and co-hosts, you'll have to join manually, whichever group you would like, or stay here in the main room if you like.
Okay, folks, thanks for joining us in the main room. If you'd like to fill out the option, if you go under participants on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the breakout session, and there should be a blue hyperlink to ask for to join a different breakout group. But for those still in the main room, we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to try and see if I can, if there's somebody, looks like Ben, you still are with me in the main room. And, okay, great. So, let's see who is still with me here. We'd like a little bit of feedback. Oh, okay. Looks like I'm moving to breakout session 2. Stand by.
Just strong P. How do I join? I clicked join, but I'm not sure I'm in breakout session 2.
I think if you go. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me, Colonel Judy?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So I think you go under participants, that little mouse at the top, and then it shows you the 2 different rooms, like breakout session 1 and 2, and then you just hit join.
Yeah,
You tried that?
put 1 for 2, and then.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I joined it, but it's okay. It's not working for me. There's a lot of things in WebEx I didn't know how to do, and I have no idea how to do it. It's impressive.
All right, welcome back, and we got your comment there, Rick. No worries. Okay. So I think my understanding, I was chatting with Zach and the other group, and it sounded like the other group is having very similar, very productive conversation like our group was, but not actually necessarily ranking the alternatives. Winston's saying I'm double voiced. I'm wondering if there's an echo somewhere. That's still an issue. Okay, it sounds like it's gone away on my headset anyway. Okay, good. Appreciate that warning though. So we didn't do the ranking, but that's fine because the point of that was, you know, to figure out what parts of these alternatives work for you and what parts don't work, and why, and what's your thoughts about that. So, you know, as Eric was saying, these are very initial. None of these is going to, you know, make it to the final array unchanged, and certainly none of them is going to be the ultimate plan that's chosen. So this is just the starting point for this conversation, and I think that was a really great conversation that we were just having in both groups. And I just realized that I didn't even get to all my setup slides before the work groups, but it really wasn't necessary with you guys. I mean, you're pros by now, so yeah. So there's the first work group and the slides. Okay, so report out. Because we didn't do the rankings, we don't have to report that. I'm just wondering if maybe someone from the other group would like to go first. Eric or whomever was, maybe Cindy, whoever was taking notes there. If you just want to give a few brief highlights of some of the things that you heard that struck you. Obviously, we can't be comprehensive, you know, reporting everything that everyone said, but we were all taking notes, so we've got that. But Eric or Cindy or someone else from the other group, if you'd like to just mention a few things worth, you know, everyone's consideration, that'd be great.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, you're right. We didn't necessarily rank the alternatives. We more just kind of talked about either specific pieces of alternatives, talked about concerns with each of those alternatives, and so we'll just kind of highlight a few of those. We had a lot of discussion about the natural nature-based alternative and how might, you know, it impact or benefit water quality. We talked a lot about kind of the distinction between this being a flood risk management project and not an ecosystem restoration project, so that we can implement measures that you know, primarily reduce flood risk, but have a secondary benefit of potentially benefits to water quality, that we can capture those secondary benefits in our comprehensive benefits, kind of capture these alternatives as we move forward. There were some, you know, so we talked a lot about the tunnels, so, you know, just kind of distinctions between the tunnels and kind of the engineering. I'm going to use the term engineering feat, but the engineering complexity of digging down like 60 feet or so, as Kelly mentioned in the chat, versus utilizing existing kind of infrastructure, or upgrading existing storm sewers, or storm drainage systems to route the water throughout the system. We did have a brief discussion about, you know, would they put water into the ocean 100% of the time, or under only certain events, kind of getting back to the water quality considerations. We did talk a little bit about the below valley district park channel modification and what that might look like, and how it might benefit. So, you know, it would act as kind of store water in that more local area, wouldn't necessarily store enough water to reduce impacts all the way downstream, but more localized benefits. And so, you know, we talked a lot about individual specifics of alternatives, but I think that's great, right? Because it's only through doing that you can kind of wrap your head around how all these things fit together. I think I'll just end by saying we did have a discussion about, all these alternatives are fairly nuanced, right? So have our cornerstones, and we kind of add on pieces to that, right? And so these alternatives are going to be very complex and complicated, and because of that, they're going to require some pretty significant data, right? So we talked about how we're updating our models to most accurately capture and characterize flood risk throughout the watershed. And then also, Tyson's near your heart as a sociologist, the other social effects of those, right? So things like social vulnerability, and all of those things, right? It's just all pieces of the puzzle we have to capture. And the team is aware of, and we are doing that. And so I think just the acknowledgement that they're complex alternatives, right? That I think that somebody said it best. The team has a tough task ahead of us, right? But we're up for the challenge. And so I'll leave it there, and then I'll let you guys kind of outbrief as well.
Great. Kelly, what was a few things that you want to highlight from our group?
Our group had a lot of great feedback. I think everyone had really great insight into everything. It seemed like, for the most part, we're all open to these measures. I think natural and nature-based is what everyone is really preferring and leaning on. And man, I have so many notes. I'm prepared for this question. I need a minute to go over my notes.
No worries. I mean, you're right. It was a ton of great comments, both in the chat and in the discussion that we got. A lot of really thoughtful remarks.
Yeah, and I did want to note that it was nice to have input from maybe some people that we haven't seen before. So it's really good to have some other perspectives as well. So I just want to say thank you for providing feedback, and this is why we're doing it. And we are listening to you. So we hope that you're able to see that effort as well. We got feedback about aesthetics. So instead of just throwing some more concrete up there, making it more aesthetically pleasing. And so that is something that our team has been considering, and that'll be later down the road for design, but it's something that we have been keeping in mind, especially in kind of steering where our design would be. And the idea of bypasses and using existing infrastructure is something that a few people voiced that they did like. They like the idea that we're not just regurgitating the previous study plans and kind of repackaging it. That's not what we're doing. We're really looking at this from a brand new perspective. So that's kind of some of the notes I took. There will be a lot more detailed notes, but that's kind of the summary.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking these notes and doing that. Yeah, this has really been super productive. So we're going to have another work group session here now. I'm going to do another one where you'll be randomly assigned, so you may end up in a different group than previously. I think how are we doing? We are right on time, or maybe even a little ahead of time. So that's great. So if we have a little extra time at the end of today's session, then we can always just open it up to general questions. But what we're going to focus on for this work group is now generating our own plans. So this is honestly probably something that might be a little bit easier on Thursday when you've got folks sitting around a table. But we'll take a crack at it here today. So what we're going to do is I'll send you to your groups, and we'll put up your facilitator probably put up a slide. I'll show you the slide. The list of the measures here, so you can reference these measures. Also, you can download from the develeloped.gov/LLI. On that page, there is a link in the banner, in the yellow banner at the top, to, I think it's a PDF that lists these, and it actually also includes the notes for each measure as well. So if you want to download that, you can go there and do that. Let me go ahead. I think we posted the link earlier, but I'm going to do it again right now. Okay, so there's the link if you want to go and download that for yourself. And again, it includes the notes on each measure. But we'll also have this list up for you to reference. All right, so the idea is kind of, as the team did, putting together its initial array of these different alternative plans, that is going to be your task, is to do the same thing, figure out, okay, what's the good strategy, what should we start with, and then once we start with that particular cornerstone, assuming that that's the way you want to do it, then what does that mean for additional measures that we need to include, that kind of thing. So let's give it a go. All right, I'm going to say, yeah, and then we'll report out again. All right, breakout sessions, let's start. Why does session 2 have 30 people and session 1 is 15? That is weird.
It looks like I'm still in the main meeting room with some folks. I can see Mr. Mills and a few other folks who are not on their camera, and I wanted to check in first to see if anybody needs help joining one of the breakout sessions before we continue.
Sure, how do you do that?
Just a little bit. Yeah, so I'm your WebEx screen. You should have on the right-hand side participants. And it's in the lower right-hand corner, it should look like a little shape of a person with a few lines. Participants. Great. Yeah. So for those that are still walking through, under participants, there are listed two breakout sessions, breakout session 1 and 2, and to the right-hand side, there should be a blue hyperlink for join. Any questions on that before we move on to our discussion of the management measures list? Okay. If something comes to you later and you still need assistance, please let me know, and I'll also be monitoring the chat. So we are currently on slide 31, the management measures list, and I wanted to check in with folks to see if there's any further comments on the sort of master menu of these management measures beyond what's already been discussed in the last breakout session. Okay. Yes. So thank you, Keel. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see, so you can see chat. That's like a little speech bubble. To the left of chat is something that looks like a little person holding a stack of books or a stack of pancakes. And so if you click on that stack, it should say the number of participants. And then underneath that should be breakout sessions. And I will see if I can assign you. Okay. So it doesn't look like I've got the ability in the moment to assign you to a breakout session.
Yeah, or I don't have that either. It's just Jordan.
Okay. So you're in you see participants, and it should say 49 at the top, but you don't see anything under participants other than like people's names. You don't see breakout sessions.
Hi, Vera. So sorry, I'm trying to eat dinner and I'm trying not to a bunch of background noise, but I see breakout session just starting. You'll be assigned to a session to join, but there's no, like the last time this happened, a pop-up came in, and this time nothing happened.
Okay. Okay, so option B, we're going to try another way. So up at the top of your screen, there should be like a menu bar that starts on the left with File and ends on the right with Help. The second item to the right should say Breakout Sessions. If you click on that, the drop-down menu should say Join Breakout Session, and then you can hover your mouse over that and join 1 or 2. Let's see if that'll work for folks.
I am on the web interface, not the app, so I don't think I have that option.
Okay. Okay. So that would certainly explain it. Yeah. So since we're all here together, I will stick with you guys, and I am here to listen to your additional comments, either if you'd like to speak aloud, to avoid speaking over one another. Maybe if you could sort of raise your hand with a little virtual hand raise or chat in, you know, to sort of another way of virtually raising your hand so that we can kind of make sure we hear from everybody who'd like to speak. So yeah, I'm ready to take some good notes on your comments regarding the management measures list.
So sure, I'll just jump in. I guess a question that comes to mind is we have this enormous list of options, and it it seems clear that any solution is going to involve, I mean, from the slides that were presented, right, even if you take the storage cornerstone or the any of these, there's a list of other things that you have to do because, you know, the solution A doesn't solve the entire problem on its own, right? So no matter what you do, there's going to be sort of an all of the above approach, and it's just a question of picking which of this long list of items are you know, what's the key thing, and then what are the supporting measures. And it seems like a very, is there a roadmap to get us from this public feedback to, let's say, expert feedback that's ranking these in a different way, and then putting all that together to present something that a large group of people could actually come to a consensus on?
Thanks, Gail. So just to make sure I understood the comment, what I heard you saying was, or asking for, was a little bit of guidance or path forward regarding how we are moving from, again, the sort of like higher level public comment into like technical review, and then back again once we have that technical information for public review again. And like what is the plan and the timeline for that? Did I understand your comment correctly?
Yes, more or less. And that's the question's framed around the concern that, you know, if you present to a large group of people a giant list of options, you're never going to get a consensus on what's the right one, right? So how is that getting pared down, and over what timeline and through what process?
Okay. I'm going to see if I can move this presentation, because I think we touched on at least the when is the project going to be available for public comment again. I think that was on one of the earlier slides, so let's see if I can. Yeah, hopefully you guys are seeing this as well as I'm changing the presentation. For those following along perhaps on the phone, in the presentation that I believe is available on the City and County website, I'm on slide 9 that says study process and timeline. And so we are we're acknowledging that there's about a 2-month delay. And so it looks like we're sort of at phase 2 meetings, but I think that we may even be a little on the early end of that. So there's at least 3, if not 4, additional opportunities that, and as the project manager mentioned earlier, they've already started, the technical team has already started evaluating the different cornerstone alternatives and engaging with sort of technical evaluation. And so hopefully by the next round of public engagement, given that 2-month delay, that there will be that the technical evaluation of the cornerstone kind of alternatives will be available for public review. As far as the format that'll take, I think at a minimum there'll be another. Usually there's some sort of presentation like this that is available on the main LOI webpage for the with the City and County. That's available for review during and after the presentation. Yeah, so that's what I know for now, and I will also bring your questions back to the team to see if they have anything to add to that. Any other follow-up on that, Keel?
No, thank you so much. I mean, basically, I'm just concerned. I don't want to see this discussion just go on and on and on. We're already, as I understand it, there was a solution that was funded, and then it kind of fell through a couple of years back. And meanwhile, we're losing time here where, you know, some people could be really badly affected by another severe weather event. And it's just, I understand there could be, everybody's going to have concerns about any solution that's implemented, but I'm just curious, how do you manage that against the concerns of the many? Yeah, that we actually end up doing something.
Right. Right. Not analysis paralysis, so to speak, but also not ready fire aims. In terms of how are we balancing those two moving forward while still acquiring meaningful public comment?
Absolutely.
So, great question. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Any other comments from UQ or from other folks still in the main room? I am here to take notes on your. And if it's a little more comfortable for you, I can see the chat box. So that's another way to reach out. I'll give it another minute, and I can sort of, as a reminder, maybe go sort of slowly through some of the slides again to sort of do a bit of a refresh on some of the cornerstone alternatives.
One other question that came to mind for me, there's somebody that's quite vocal about this in the chat. The proposed, or I believe the design is underway, actually, the Alapono Bridge. That has really, does that have any connection to this at all? Or does the Army Corps have any authority or interest in that? Or is that completely separate?
That's a great question. I'm not aware of that as relates to the flood risk management project that you're talking about. The Alapono Bridge is a proposed pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Now, yeah, between Waikiki and Mo'ili.
Yeah. So as far as Corps involvement, at a minimum, it might be a slightly different group within the Corps. Either the Corps, potentially the Coast Guard, all of which to say Corps Regulatory Office of the Honolulu District regulates work and structures in, over, or under navigable waters of the U.S. And so this bridge may involve an activity that's regulated by the Corps Regulatory Office. So they may need a Corps permit. But I don't know that it's, I haven't heard about it as it relates to like a measure that is intended to assist in this flood risk management project. So
yeah,
it sounds like there's generally sort of eyes on what's happening around the LOI, and people are just trying to keep an attentive dialogue on what's happening.
I think so. I think so. I just it might be helpful just from a managing the discussion perspective to clarify that issue of what the Corps' role is or isn't with regards to that bridge, so that those who feel one way or another about it can put their complaints or encouragement to the right party, right? And my understanding is that it's the city and county of Honolulu that is fully in control of that bridge, and that construction is more or less funded and green lighted. And I would think, if I'm hearing you correctly, that would have to be approved by the Army Corps, but that would be the extent of your involvement, right? So it would be coordinated, let's say, with any solution that we're doing with flood management, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it. Is that kind of accurate?
That's my understanding as well, and I think you make a great point to ensure that that is made clear in outreach communications. Because it's got the name Alawai in it, the Alapono Bridge, so I can see where people might lump them together. And so if they are in fact completely separate, then that would be an important clarification. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
Trying to keep the conversation focused. It's great. So Narby, Tim Hurley, and I think that's it. So we have just a few other folks with us in this main room. And this is, just sort of a unstructured opportunity for some dialogue and some discussion about the different options. And to kind of get those juices flowing, I can kind of go through those again slowly, and hopefully that will help jog any thoughts you'd like to contribute. So, starting, for those of you following along on the phone, there's an initial, so the sort of general alternatives as they are now kind of start on slide 16 in the presentation. So this first one is the storage cornerstone involving detention at McKee District Park, Minoa District Park, and the Alloway Golf Course, along with one important clarification I made earlier was that although number 4 is listed as McKee High School storage, it was really more of a kind of wall, not like a berm around the area that would create a sort of like bathtub storage type situation. So that's number 1. 2A is for bypasses. And my understanding of this was the enhancement of existing channel infrastructure. So the 6 key aspects, the cornerstone aspects of this alternative include the Pequot Street bypass. Oh, okay, I will pause and shift to a comment from Luciano. It seems that Mo'ili is not properly mentioned in these slides except in number 31. Also in the press, the Hokies article, only because mentioned by Cindy Lynch, only Mo'ili is 2 feet lower than Waikiki all along the Alloway. The more explicit protection measures for Mo'ili are needed. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Luciano. And I will definitely pass my comment back along to the technical team for the project. And I remember that you had brought that up years ago during the original, for the 2019 public meetings for the project. So, yeah, and I also think that some of the hydraulic modeling that we're doing will show the how effective each of these types of alternatives is at controlling flooding resulting from different types of storms. And I think having those pictures is really going to help keep things focused on flood reduction. And part of that, they know about Mo'ili being a lower area. So I appreciate you bringing that comment back and keeping us focused on making sure that flood risk protection is equitable. Great point. Okay, let's see. The next, bypasses, the Pequot Street bypass, Woodlawn bypass, Kapalua bypass, Fort University bypass, Saratoga bypass, and the Pocky Avenue bypass. Those are the cornerstone aspects of Alternative 2A. Alternative 2B is the cornerstones are flood walls. So the Kahana flood wall, Woodlawn flood wall, Koali Road flood wall, and the Allaway Canal flood walls. And one of the comments that was brought up earlier had to do with the aesthetics and knowing a little bit more about the height of the flood walls. So those have been noted. Yeah, so that's an important factor to consider. Alternative 2C, second outlet. So this is a meeting at the Diamond Head side of the Allaway Canal, putting in another outlet that looks like it goes through Kapalua Park. Alternative 3 tunnels. This was mentioned early on in today's meeting with, I think David Coffey was mentioning that it was part of the SWIFT proposal by Oceanit. And the cornerstone aspects of the tunnels alternative would be as far as, I can't remember if it was for this solution or for this alternative for the next one. Okay. As far as like non-structural solutions, that could include a range of measurements, including raising buildings higher on stilts or improving evacuation plans. And as part of that, like you mentioned, Luciano, it's important to know who would be some of the more vulnerable communities, whether it's folks who don't have cars or folks that maybe are not on social media, and what the best way is to ensure that everybody is protected equitably. Okay, so natural nature-based, and last solution, hybrid combined plan. So the cornerstone aspects of alternative 5 include the Minoa District Park Extension, Woodlawn Bypass, and Alawite Canal flood walls. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for comments thus far on the initial array of alternatives. Stuff that you like, stuff that you have concerns with. I may have been double muted for some of that, but for folks in the main room, basically what I just said was I was reviewing the items for an optional polling. So earlier in today's session, we had the opportunity to rate which one or several of the alternatives sounded the best to each of us, and which of those we have the most concerns with. And so in lieu of watching the poll again, if anybody still in the main room wanted to chat in or share over the phone, I am standing by for input. Okay, so for those still in the main room, let's see if perhaps some of these other slides might generate some input. So this is where we are now. This is a review of the work groups. I'm Vera Costello here in the WebEx main room. And those are just the grab rules for the work groups. And this is asking about the ranking for the work group session about what are some of the issues with the different alternatives, some of the things that would be useful. So that is where we are. And for those that have recently joined, if you'd like to join a breakout group, you may have the option of you can go to participants, and you should see under participants the option of breakout session 1 and breakout session 2 with a blue hyperlink on the right-hand side. Alternatively, you can go to the top menu, go to breakout sessions, and scroll down to join breakout session. And you can select 1 or 2. And please let me know if you're having any trouble with that.
Yeah, Vera, I had that option before when we did the first breakout, but I don't know why it's not showing up on. I'm on my iPhone, that's why. I don't know why it's not showing up now.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you for that, Jordan. Yeah, and I don't seem to be able to move people myself into breakout sessions. Yeah, it won't let me do that. I'm sorry about that. I'm glad you're here. So thank you for joining and sticking with us. It was a small crowd here in the main room.
No, all good. I think it happened when
Well,
I got kicked out before, then I had to come back in.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's the pain.
No, all good. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining. So the purpose of what's getting discussed in the other breakout groups, I'm just forwarding, moving through the presentation. Okay, so ultimately, the first work group was to rank the alternatives as they've been grouped into the 5 plus action alternatives. That was what we were discussing in our first work group. The second work group is to look at page, page 31 of the presentation that you can acquire from the City County LOI website. And if you were picking items from the buffet, generate your own preferred alternative based on the 51 management measures still under consideration, and explain your reasoning behind your alternative plan. So this can be both sort of for and against. Yeah. So let's see. So, for example, somebody may have concerns regarding the flood wall system relative to aesthetics of the flood wall. Somebody else had mentioned earlier regarding bypass systems, concerns about ensuring frequent maintenance, because whatever becomes a structural measure for this project would probably need to be maintained. Yeah. So let's hear from. Looks like it's just the 5 of us here in this main room. If you're trying to join a breakout session and still having trouble, and you've already tried the participants list, you may also want to try the breakout sessions tab at the top of your screen. But while we're here in the main room, I'd like to hear from you guys about how you would select from this list of 51 different measures to create your ideal scenario to manage flood risk in the Olive watershed. Over to you.
Vera, this is Jordan. I'm good. I don't have any comment.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah. Kristen or Tim, do you guys have anything? I haven't had the chance to hear from you guys yet. There's plenty of time, nice, relaxed environment to hear your comments.
Hey, Vera, let me just say thanks a lot for facilitating and sticking around with us in this marooned group of folks left here. I don't really have anything further to add. I was just curious if there was going to be, another regroup with the main group and some more things that might be presented that I could stick around for, or what the plan was there.
Yes. Yeah. So we, for those following along on the phone, we've now shifted in response to Jill's excellent question to slide 32. So I am not sure how much more time we have left. I'm checking the chat, and I'm not seeing an estimate, but we are coming back together after this breakout group, and our due out will be to describe our own alternative plan. And again, I hope I mentioned this earlier, but if we don't have one, I get it. It's a pretty complex menu. Maybe not quite as intimidating as the ones that you take factory, but it's a lot. So if we don't really have our own DIY alternative plan, that's okay. But if we do, then we would be describing the management measures that it would feature, how it works, and why it is a good or superior plan. Yeah. So thinking through some of these measures or alternatives, I don't want folks to feel like you have to be an engineer or do your own hydraulic analysis to have information that would be useful to the design team. So, but also sort of feeds into that personal experience in some of these locations. So when we're thinking about tunnels, for example, ensuring that the outfall of the tunnels or the tunnels themselves don't impact local surf spots. I don't surf, so I don't already know where those might be or how the installation of the tunnels might affect them, and hopefully it wouldn't. But that would be like, an example of personal experience that would be useful to share. Okay, it looks like we're going to have a little bit more time together in our room state. Somebody had mentioned a little earlier regarding Woodlawn Bridge, and just some folks have mentioned their personal experience with the 2004 flood that trashed the basement of the university library. Again, that's more like personal experience that is really valuable to have and to share, to give context or to help to direct the alternative evaluation. So that's useful. Let's see. It looks like something that wasn't mentioned in great detail under watershed wide risk communication / education. So something I'm curious about. We can take a little break from the crafting our own alternative, and I'm curious for those that are with me in the main room, how did you hear about this meeting? Because part of what's important is making sure that we reach as many folks that are interested as possible. So I'm curious how you all heard about tonight's meeting.
So I am not certain, but I want to say I signed up for newsletters from the city and county website, and I got a notice of it from being on that mailing list. That's the best that I can recall. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Our other three folks that are on the call with us, if you are willing to share how you heard about this evening's meeting, and if you let other folks know and kind of how that went for you.
No, Vera, it's just good to hear what the comments from the public for us in the city.
For sure. Yeah. This has been a really long journey, and I really appreciate the dedication of the technical team to not only hearing comments, but also really being committed to providing that two-way dialogue and feedback on the comments. So it'll be interesting to see how things continue from here based on some of that technical analysis. Richmond or Tim, any thoughts about how you heard about this evening's meeting?
Yeah, I work for the city as well, so that's how I heard about it. Just here to listen and hear comments from the public. Thanks for putting it on.
And me, I read it in the newspaper.
Oh, cool.
Can you hear me? Okay. I've had issues hearing. The sound didn't work, so I had to leave and come back a couple of times, and I'm juggling some things. But I did notice that there are walls around the canal on every array. Does that indicate that walls around the canal are pretty much inevitable? Did you hear that?
Great question, Tim. I did, yes. Let me look back through here. So for those following along just on the phone, maybe I can't speak because I think most of you guys are either online or on the app. Let's see. Okay. Alternative 1, I'll like now flip off. 2A, I'll like now flip off. 2B, now dredging, I'll like now flip off. There it is. Also 2C, and 3, there it is again. 4, yep, there it is. And 5, yep. So I would say I think you make a great point that like none of that happens there, but the message that I'm hearing from the technical team is that things are not set in stone just yet. So I don't know that just because there's that continuity that automatically the alternative that ultimately gets selected, whatever it is, will include flood walls around the LY. But that is a important pattern that you brought up, and that will be so I'll show that comment that including those measures seems to give the perception that is automatically going to be included no matter what alternative is selected. So I will include that. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a great point. I hadn't realized that, but it also kind of highlights, and this concern was voiced earlier by, I think, a number of other people, but the question of the height, if the walls are inevitable, then it really matters, how tall are we talking about? Because are we obstructing views from people's homes? Are we obstructing views even from those who would be using the pathways along the canal for walking or running or biking or what have you? Does it become unusable as a recreational opportunity, or how much does it inhibit it? That becomes really, really important, right?
All right. That sounded good. So sorry to break us out of our discussions. I think we're, again, both groups are going really strong. So we have, fortunately, we've got some time to report out on what we've discussed, and then maybe take a couple quick questions before we end today. So, I'll turn it over again to Eric and Cindy. If you guys want to let us know if you were able to come up with an alternative, or at least a set of measures that that are favored or disfavored or whatever. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, so we had a great discussion that did lead to a couple alternatives. Generally, our alternatives did focus more on kind of natural and nature-based measures. So Sydney proposed kind of the cornerstone, I think, of the all-wide golf course detention basin and maximizing permeability throughout the watershed. And then on top of that, we discussed concerns about utilizing the parks. And so instead of utilizing the parks, we incorporated up in Manoa some channel modifications to reduce risks further upstream where that detention basin is, as well as the bypass at Woodlawn Bridge, again, to kind of effectively manage water in Manoa without impacting the parks. Moving over to Makiki and Palolo, actually, there was discussion about maximizing low-E, low-E kalo farming. We have some folks that are pretty, they have a good understanding of where it exists and where it doesn't, and how it can be maximized. And so really, that was kind of the discussion in those two watersheds. And then down along the canal, in addition to the all-wide golf course, we had a secondary outlet. Yeah, so that would pump water in to benefit water quality during kind of normal flows, and then pumps to pump water out during high flow events, right? So the same outlet would be act as that right outlet during those high flow events, as well as pumps to help expedite water out. And so that was an alternative. It started with a cornerstone and built off of that. We then talked about another alternative that would be kind of have a cornerstone of an agricultural focus. Again, kind of getting into the heart of the low-E kalo, and what that might look like on top of that. So on top of that, there were channel naturalizations. But we didn't get too far into the specifics on that, just kind of the general desire for an alternative that more focused on that as a cornerstone. So that's kind of where we left it, but we did have a good discussion otherwise. So in addition to that, those were just from the specific alternative outcomes. That's kind of where we landed. But I think there was value. The last thing I'll say is that there was value in that during our alternative development, it was, somebody lived in Makiki, right, and has some thoughts about Makiki, and folks worked in Palolo, so we were getting the specific, and then there were folks that were on the Manoa community board, right? And so getting that kind of intimate experience with each of the subnations and having that perspective kind of helps guide that alternative in its development.
That is fantastic. That's what it's all about. That's awesome. So we also had a really robust discussion, and I think we kind of also came up with two alternatives. One of which was sort of a modified version of the tunnels that we have in our initial array. We've got that tunnels alternative. So there's sort of a modified version of that, based off the Swift tunnels, but with some differences in terms of the inlets, where they're placed, and sort of how they're designed. So that was one, and then we had a second alternative comprising a bunch of other measures, starting with forest management and stream management and the upper watershed. So kind of like what you guys talked about with the natural and nature-based. That's actually kind of where we started. But then some other things that people mentioned, for example, so to increase the storage in the canal, rather than raising walls would increase storage, but it would also be a lot more, aesthetically pleasing. You could have something, a path for people to walk on, that's grassy up there and that kind of thing. So far more acceptable from an aesthetic standpoint, but still accomplishing the same thing, and maybe even more effectively in some ways than just the straight up walls. So, we talked also about some non-structural measures, risk communication and education, for example, that obviously could be applied to pretty much any alternative. And then some of the other ones that people mentioned is favorable, the Woodlawn Drive bypass, the bridge bypass, the Koali flood wall, and the Kaimuki High detention basin as well, with berms in particular. And then also reducing hardcover and impervious surfaces. So it's kind of like what you guys are talking about as well in some ways. And then there were some things that others mentioned that were sort of additions to the measures that we already have. So bioswales was mentioned. So again, that's playing into the nature-based kind of theme. Also the pervious theme, and in general, also just making sure that we take into consideration, that it's a systemic sort of approach, right? That we're taking into consideration the other systems around, the watershed and how it's affecting, for example, the coral reefs, and how, the different systems within the watershed are sort of playing together. And that's certainly an important thing, I think, regardless of the specific measures being considered. So that was, I thought, a really good discussion. We had great feedback. Kelly, is there anything else that I missed that you want to add?
No, I think for the most part you captured everything. I think we're good.
Okay, great. So I want to, we're gonna get here to our wrap up pretty soon. I think we may have time for a quick question, but I want to clarify sort of where we are going from here, right? What are we doing with this information and these discussions that we've had today? So correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. I think that all of this is important input for the teams to consider as we move forward, trying to finalize our alternative array. And so some of these ideas may get incorporated into a new alternative, one or two new alternatives or something like that, or they may get incorporated into some of the existing alternatives, or that kind of thing. So in other words, I think what I'm trying to say is, don't expect that, whatever we just came up with was going to show up unaltered, but I do think that it will importantly inform the team's work and and inspire some additional alternatives or modified existing alternatives. Is that about right? Eric or Kelly?
Yeah, hey, sorry, we were on mute. No, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? So the real value in this is having everybody engage in this kind of first iteration of the platform process, right? So what are your thoughts? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Help us think about things that we weren't considering, right? There were a lot of great comments about aesthetics or user groups that need to be considered and concerns about these parts, right? And so I think all of that is extremely valuable as a team considers to refine or continues to work towards refining these alternatives. I again, tonight's discussion, as it always is phenomenal, right? And so really appreciate everybody's dedication to this and continued willingness to come out and kind of help us work through this. Again, this is the first iteration, right? And so I think as we mentioned before, please don't expect these to be the final alternatives. Please don't expect the final recommended plan to be part of these, right? This is the first step. We'll take all the feedback we got today. We'll continue to refine our analyses into the second iteration, into the third iteration. And then at some point, as we mentioned before, we'll bring you guys back into the fold, right? And I mean, you are in the fold. You're continuing to be in the fold, right? Please, I guess I said I can bring you back into the fold. That's not what I meant to say at all, right? Please continue to engage via the website, via all those avenues that you have, continue to do so. And then at some point, we will bring you back into the plan formulation process through these meetings to have a similar meeting as we had tonight, which will be a little bit further along, closer to the final array. But again, our goal is to be as transparent as possible so that you are as involved in the process as possible. Because as Tyson mentioned, that was the feedback that we strongly got in the first meeting, and it was extremely appreciated, right? And I do feel like, I think Winston made a great comment that just qualitatively, these meetings are starting to feel different, right? And I appreciate that. And I think they are. And I really, honestly, I'm looking forward to, hopefully some of y'all can come out Thursday night. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person as I can. And anyway, really appreciate the continued involvement. We'll get you back in these meetings as we move forward. I'll stop talking now. Over.
Eric, thank you for that and for your comments. Certainly on the tone and the opportunity for engagement in this meeting. I think it's primarily a reflection of where we are in the process. So I appreciate everyone's continued participation. It might have been confusing at different stages as we were engaging on different topics, but I want to ensure that you all feel that we are continuing to be open and collaborative. Certainly the lid is open on the process here, and we hope that that's been clearly communicated. And it's been a new process. So whether it's the core or the city or community members, it's a lot of information to maintain and consider and evaluate. So we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate the recognition in the chats there, and want to make sure that it's focused on where we are in the process and less on the character statements.
Absolutely appreciate it, Matt and Eric. And as you say, I mean, we want to make sure that the community has visibility and a chance for feedback at every stage of the process. We don't want there to ever be a moment when you wake up and some critical decision has been made and you haven't had any insight into it. You hadn't seen it coming. That's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that you are informed every step of the way and are able to provide as much input as possible. So, as others have said, thank you. Now, one quick thing I have to announce is that I also was very much looking forward to meeting all of you in person. But last Friday, I tested positive for COVID, so I was unable to take a flight. So I'm still here in Alexandria, Virginia, I'm afraid. So we will have to postpone that until a future date, and it really bums me out that I won't be there on Thursday. However, you will be in excellent hands on Thursday. One of our local folks from Honolulu District, Ben Reeder, will be your MC. He's an excellent facilitator, and he's a local, and he understands a lot of the concerns of the community. So you'll be in very good hands. And again, thank you and mahalo.
Colonel PB raised his hand and wanted to say something before folks head out. Tyson. Just wanted to make sure.
Oh, good. No, I think your closing comments was better than I could provide. It's just an extreme honor for me to be able to talk story, or at least listen to the talk story. Again, this project is emotional for me because I have friends in Ohio that live in that area. But I do appreciate the collaboration and the approach here of partnership because it's important. It's important to understand the history, the land, and the significance of that. And so, again, I look forward when I get back. Look forward to meeting everyone as well, and working with y'all, everyone, to include the community, especially the community, as we go forward with this. Thanks.
Appreciate that, sir. All right, everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.